try to turn it like we did to Libya. Obama did to Libya, turned it into a failed state. Same thing we did to Syria. We balkanized it. We split it up. Do you think the goal is to not to actually install another dictator like we did before in Iran, but the goal is to actually make it ungovernable and destabilize it so we can try to split it up? What do you think the end game is?
Yeah, hey, good to see you, Jimmy.
So I want to just figure out what. So I've gotten conflicting stories. I've seen Republican congressmen go on TV and say we don't want regime change in Iran. I've heard the opposite, saying that we do want regime change in Iran. Turn it like we did to Libya. Obama did to Libya, turned it into a failed state. Same thing we did to Syria. We balkanized it. We split it up. Do you think the goal is to not to actually install another dictator like we did before in Iran, but the goal is to actually make it ungovernable and destabilize it so we can try to split it up? What do you think the end game is?
Yeah, that's it. If they can achieve regime change, well, first of all, Trump is so malleable and so void that he was sold on the idea that he could actually have a Venezuela-like solution to Iran, like a relatively quick resolution after liquidating Iran's leadership with brilliant Israeli assassination tactics. And then there'd be some kind of Delcy Rodriguez figure who would just step into the void and give him access and Israel access to all of Iran's wealth and all of its shipping lanes. And that would be it. And that shows you how he surrounded himself with neoconservative psychopaths and the brain dead droids that populate the think tanks, the lanyards of K Street, who actually believe in their own lies. What he's doing is not only diabolical, it's delusional, because you can clearly see that he's receiving the exact opposite effect that he did in Venezuela by assassinating Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, someone who, if you go to Iran or go to any Shia community in the region, you will see as a very beloved figure. And killing him for many people, I'm talking about millions and millions of people, is like killing their father. So he has electrified the Shia masses. And they're persisting with this strategy of regime change, thinking that they can get the Iranian people to just rise up as though they were living under some kind of dictatorship like the Shia population in Bahrain under U.S. control is, by bombing police stations. They're not just bombing police stations. They're bombing Basij centers. These are the centers where young men who are mostly unarmed, who are very deeply invested in the Iranian revolution and the Shia ideology, they go there and they organize and they pray there. And I've been by them, just walking through Tehran. They're like next door to pharmacies and schools. I actually saw one right across the street from a synagogue, which was a synagogue open to the public. So they're bombing the crap out of these residential neighborhoods, trying to cause some civil uprising when all they're doing is murdering civilians, including many people who are critical of the Islamic Republic, who don't agree with the government, but now they're like, oh my God, like I'm like actually citing real reports I've seen from Tehran. I saw a guy at a restaurant whose head was decapitated, and he was taken out of the restaurant with his head blown off. They blew up our apartment building and then blew up the rescue crew. These are real things that happen today. People are not going to rise up when they see that happening to their neighbors. They're going to see what the Islamic Republic's leadership meant when they said that they are fighting the great Satan, because these attacks are satanic. And another thing that's being done is attacks on Iranian border guards. Why? Axios, which is like this access publication here in Washington, where they just publish basically like press releases for power, just reported that Trump is aiming to cause a Kurdish uprising. So they want groups that have been armed by the CIA, Kurdish groups in Iraq, to storm into Iran and destabilize the country. And then there's ISIS. All of these ISIS fighters were moved from the prisons in Syria because apparently the U.S. couldn't trust the al-Qaeda jail guards to keep them there. They moved them to Iraq, so they're closer to Iran, so they could try to bring ISIS in as well. So that's what Iran is up against. And what you're seeing is a complete repudiation of the entire neoconservative vision that Trump was sold on for now, where people are actually going out on their own free will as volunteers to conduct traffic, to check cars for weapons. And you're seeing kind of like a revolutionary society come into view with deeply invested in ideology. The commanders who were killed in the IRGC, the guys behind them are younger and they're more gung-ho and more willing to fight to the death. And there's this giant popular base that now will reject any ceasefire because a ceasefire will be seen as humiliation. That's what Trump has unleashed. And as we speak, U.S. embassies are under attack from Saudi Arabia to Iraq to Karachi in Pakistan, under attack by people. And the U.S. embassy in Riyadh just went up in flames because it was hit by a Shahed drone. So that's what Trump has done for Israel. For Israel. I'm sure Scott mentioned it. I wasn't able to. But Marco Rubio, who's basically in control of the administration's foreign policy, J.D. Vance is like on the B team.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio freely admitted that they did this war, the U.S. bombed, because Israel told them, if you don't bomb, we will, and then you have to follow us. I mean, can you imagine a president making the case to the American public that we have to bomb because some crazy foreign country is going to carry out an attack on a third party, so we have to just support them and throw all of these American service members in harm's way along with all U.S. embassies, U.S. bases? And that's their case. Like, they literally admitted, we're fighting a war for Israel. And there's no way to deny it. Pete Hegseth, I don't know if you have this clip, I tweeted it earlier. Pete Hegseth press conference at the Pentagon. You know, he's been avoiding the press, and like he fired the whole press corps. They banned the whole press corps at the Pentagon, and he brought in like Laura Loomer and a bunch of influencer clowns. He had to do a real press conference today. And he was asked a simple question. Can you explain to young men and women who are being sent into harm's way as members of the military why they are fighting? And he just lost it on the reporter.
We don't know what is the clear objective. What does he mean by a clear? There is no clear objective, right?
If were there an objective, he would have said what the objective was, and he would have explained why this war needed to take place. But he couldn't. We have chairmans, he said. We have chairmans, we have generals. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Pentagon, General Dan Kane, is against this war. And he went out to like the whole mainstream press before Trump launched the attack because he knew it was coming. And he said, this is going to be a disaster. And he was speaking purely from the point of view of military strategy and procurement, because he understood that what is happening right now, where the U.S. is moving THAAD anti-missile batteries from South Korea, repositioning its entire arsenal to defend Israel, would have to happen because they would run out of munitions by the end of this week. The U.S. is about to run out of munitions to defend the apartheid colony of Israel, and it's embarrassing for the Pentagon. They're leaking all over the place. I expect resignation soon. And they're under the control of this dry drunk DUI hire, Pete Hegseth, who can't even explain the mission as U.S. service members die. This is a catastrophe. Donald Trump was sold on this by Lindsey Graham, who is a vehicle for Israeli foreign influence and is a traitor to America and a traitor to humanity. And he was pressured on this and pushed into this by Zionist-controlled Murdoch media, with the idea that all he needed to do is carry out limited strikes. There would be these spectacular AI-controlled assassinations of Iranian leadership, and then the Iranian people would rise up. He was sold on the lie that Iranians had risen up in January and that Iran's government had killed 30,000 Iranians. Complete lie. There were riots that were put down, and many police officers were killed, but they were put down. And he was just sold on this lie of instant regime change. He thought the war would last 2 to 4 days. And now he has come out in an interview with the New York Post, I think, more Murdoch media, and said he can't rule out boots on the ground.
That's right. He said that. In fact, here it is. Donald Trump.
I think it would end U.S. empire.
I agree. I mean, I think.
But I mean, I hope it doesn't happen. I don't want to see American troops getting killed. American troops don't want to do this. The Pentagon leadership doesn't want to do this. But Trump is under the control of a foreign nation.
No doubt.
And he has been lured into this scenario in which there's no way out unless he wants to basically admit defeat.
So,
because he's losing right now. And a message to the Israeli public introducing whatever stupid name they came up with, Operation Roaring Lion.
Yeah.
He made one of the most important statements where he said that Trump is enacting the plan that I put into place 40 years ago. He just said it. Okay, he's taking credit for everything Trump is doing. And everyone who is watching this right now needs to just constantly cite that statement and constantly just reinforce the point that Trump has become a vehicle for Israeli influence, and the Israeli agenda, as Netanyahu has been determined to enact for his entire career, is to get the U.S. as deeply involved in a bloody conflict or a series of bloody conflicts in the Middle East as possible, and to make the American public bay for blood as revenge for the killing of their soldiers, because Netanyahu is afraid, justifiably, that the U.S. will lose interest and the American public will lose interest and turn against spending $4 billion a year and all sorts of other tax incentives and buying bonds to support his crappy little psychotic apartheid colony, when what the U.S. empire really wants to do is pivot to Asia and compete with China. And so Netanyahu is winning right now as the U.S. is losing. The U.S. is repositioning critical military assets. I mean, think from a purely imperial point of view right now, not from a Max Blumenthal point of view or Jimmy Dore point of view. Imperial point of view, you want your THAAD missile batteries, the most advanced air defense system. You want them in the Pacific Rim. You want them countering China. You want them in Taiwan. You want them in South Korea and Japan. And then, beyond that, you probably want them in Ukraine, and you want your Patriot batteries in Ukraine because Russia is the next biggest threat. And you're basically in a war with Russia. And they're repositioning all of that to defend Israel. They're even repositioning or abandoning the Gulf allies who've been paying Trump so much money through corruption channels like his World Liberty Financial crypto network.